Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more heart-melting love stories. This one will touch your soul, so make sure you watch till the end. The world saw him as a legend. Nathan Cole, the untouchable millionaire. He built his empire from the ground up, one sleepless night after another. At just 45, he was the founder and CEO of Coltech, a billion-dollar company that powered half the city's smart systems. He was always in the headlines, gracing magazine covers, leading innovation summits, and breaking business records. But no one ever saw the man behind the name. No one saw the pain hiding in his dark, distant eyes. Every morning, Nathan arrived at work sharp at 7 a.m. Every evening, he left at 9 p.m., walking alone to his black car with no expression on his face. His office was spotless, sleek, and cold. Not a single personal photo. No flowers, no color, no warmth. And his rule was simple. No one was to touch him. No handshakes, no pats on the back, no hugs, nothing. People whispered about it. Maybe he's just cold. Maybe he's a perfectionist. Maybe he thinks he's better than us. But no one knew the truth. He hadn't touched a woman in 20 years. It all started 2 decades ago. Nathan wasn't always this distant. At 25, he was full of fire. He was in love, truly, deeply in love, with a woman named Elena. She was gentle, warm, and full of laughter. They dreamed of a future together, traveling the world, starting a family, building a life full of joy and color. But Elena's family had other plans. They were wealthy, proud, and harsh, and they didn't like Nathan. "He's not like us," they said. "He comes from the wrong background. He doesn't belong in our circle, and even worse, he's not the right race." One rainy evening, Elena came to him with tears in her eyes. "They're threatening to disown me," she whispered. "They said they'll cut me off if I don't leave you." Nathan reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "I love you," she said, voice shaking, "but I can't lose everything. I'm sorry." She left. That night, Nathan's world shattered. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stood by the window of his small apartment, watching the rain fall, and he made a vow. "I will never love again. I will never be touched again. I will become so powerful, no one will ever be able to hurt me like this again." And he did just that. Nathan worked harder than anyone. He slept only 3 hours a night. He built a tech empire brick by brick, code by code. He became the youngest CEO in the industry. People feared him, respected him, even admired him. But no one really knew him. His employees followed his orders without question. His assistants were always replaced within months. Some cried, some quit, some simply gave up. No one could get close. He didn't laugh. He didn't trust. He didn't let anyone in. Until one Monday morning, when a new assistant walked through the tall glass doors of Coltech. Her name was Isabella Moore. She had soft curls that bounced with every step, eyes that sparkled with quiet strength, and a smile that could melt winter. She wore a simple blue dress, held a notebook close to her chest, and walked into Nathan's office without fear. The staff whispered, "She won't last a week. She's too kind for him. He'll break her down, just like the others." But Isabella didn't flinch. She greeted Nathan with a gentle, "Good morning, Mr. Cole." He looked up from his laptop, expecting just another nervous voice. But something about her tone made him pause. It was warm, unshaken, real. He didn't answer. He just nodded, eyes watching her closely. And as she turned to arrange his files, something shifted, just a flicker. But in Nathan's frozen heart, a single crack appeared. He didn't understand it then. But that small moment, that soft voice, would soon become the start of everything he never knew he needed. Her name was Isabella Moore, and she carried her world not just on her back, but in her eyes. At just 24 years old, Isabella had already seen too much of life's cruelty. Born to a black mother and a white father, she learned early what it meant to be stared at, judged, whispered about. Some people called her too dark. Others called her not black enough. But Isabella? She never let their words define her worth. She grew up in a small apartment in the city's east side, where sirens sang lullabies and the lights flickered more than they glowed. Her mother worked 2 jobs. Her father was gone before her 3rd birthday. She didn't have much, but she had strength, and she had dreams. She worked hard, studied harder, and graduated top of her college class, despite juggling part-time jobs and long commutes. Now standing at the doors of Coltech, she clutched her resume in one hand and her courage in the other. "Don't mess this up," she whispered to herself, heart pounding. She needed this job more than anything. Rent was due, her mother's medicine wasn't cheap, and there was no backup plan. When they told her she got the assistant position to the CEO himself, she cried on the bathroom floor, quiet, grateful tears. People warned her, "He's impossible. He fires assistants like he's swatting flies. He hasn't touched anyone in years." But Isabella didn't flinch. She'd faced worse. So on her first day, she walked into Nathan Cole's cold, silent office and smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," she said gently, placing a coffee beside his laptop. He didn't look up. Most would have shrunk. Most would have backed away. But Isabella stood firm, her smile unwavering. She wasn't there to change him. She was just there to do her job, and she was good at it. In just 3 days, she had memorized his entire schedule. In 1 week, she reorganized years of scattered files. And in 2 weeks, she'd done something no one else ever had. She made Nathan notice. Not just her work, not just her appearance, but her soul. He watched the way she treated others, never once judging by position or power. She thanked the janitor by name. She helped the receptionist carry boxes. She spoke to the vice president with the same grace she showed the interns. She didn't walk with fear. She walked with light. Nathan couldn't understand it. At first it irritated him, the way she hummed softly when organizing files, the way she left fresh flowers near the window, the way her smile stayed even when he ignored her. But slowly, day by day, something in him began to bend. One rainy morning, he came in earlier than usual. His coat was soaked, his eyes tired. She looked up, concerned. "Rough morning?" she asked softly. He blinked. No one had ever asked him that. He didn't answer, just nodded. But her words stayed with him the entire day. And then there was the Tuesday morning in March. Nathan was in the elevator, holding a folder of high-stress merger papers. Suddenly, the power flickered. The elevator stopped, and he wasn't alone. Isabella stood beside him, calm but alert. He felt the walls closing in, his old panic returning, trapped, breathless. She noticed his clenched fists. "Breathe with me," she said gently. He turned, shocked. "Mr. Cole, it's okay," she continued, her voice low and steady. "Just breathe in and out." He did, and for the first time in 20 years, he let someone help him. When the power came back 5 minutes later, they stepped out quietly. Nothing was said, but everything had changed. The air between them had shifted. Nathan found himself watching her when she wasn't looking. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, in a soft, earthy way, but because of the light she carried. It made him feel something he hadn't felt in 2 decades. Alive. He noticed how she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear when reading. He noticed how she bit her lip when deep in thought. He noticed how her eyes filled with kindness even when others were cruel. And one day when she brought in her lunch and offered him half her sandwich without hesitation, something inside him cracked wide open. "Why?" he asked. "Why what?" she replied. "Why are you kind to me?" She smiled, that soft, unshaken smile. "Because you look like you haven't had kindness in a long time," she said. He couldn't speak. He just turned to the window, hiding the tear that threatened to fall. Isabella didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. In silence, they shared lunch, and unknowingly began to heal together. The storm came without warning. Dark clouds rolled over the city like a slow, heavy tide. Rain pounded the windows of Coltech's glass tower, turning the skyline into a blur of shadows and streaks. By 6 p.m., most of the staff had already packed up and gone home. They hated storms, especially in a building so tall, where thunder seemed to echo off the walls. But 2 people stayed behind that night: Nathan Cole and Isabella Moore. She was reviewing notes for a high-stakes presentation. He was finalizing merger documents with a furrowed brow, as always. Neither of them spoke. The silence between them had become familiar, but not cold. Then, it happened. Boom! A flash of lightning lit up the city for just 1 second. And then, darkness. The power went out. The entire building dropped into stillness. Elevators froze. Lights blinked off. Computer screens went black. Nathan's office, once lit with a soft glow from the desk lamp, was now bathed in eerie shadow. Isabella stood by the bookshelf, frozen. Then she laughed, a soft, warm sound that broke through the storm's noise. "This feels like a mystery novel," she said, turning toward him. "Locked in the office during a blackout with the mysterious CEO." Nathan looked at her. His lips twitched. A smile. It was small, barely there, but it was real. He reached into the drawer and pulled out a small emergency candle. He lit it with a match. The flame flickered gently, casting golden light across the room. For the first time, Nathan's face didn't seem so hard. The glow softened his jaw, his eyes, his armor. Isabella stepped closer and sat across from him. The candlelight danced between them. "I used to be afraid of the dark," she said quietly. "As a kid, I thought it was where all the bad things lived." Nathan listened, saying nothing. "But later," she continued, "I learned that sometimes the dark makes you braver. You have to find your own light when there's none around." He looked at her differently now, not just as an employee, not just as someone young and bright, but as someone real, someone who had suffered and still chose to shine. She told him stories about her father, who taught her to walk tall in rooms that whispered, about her mother who always reminded her, kindness is your superpower. She talked about the job interviews where they looked at her skin before her resume, about the college professor who assumed she was on scholarship for the wrong reasons, about how tired she was sometimes of being told she didn't fit. And yet, she smiled, not because it was easy, but because she had chosen to. Nathan's throat tightened. He saw her now, not as an assistant, not as someone who made his coffee or booked his meetings, but as a woman who had walked through fire and emerged with flowers in her hands. "You've been through more than most," he finally said, voice rough with emotion, "and yet you sit here laughing, glowing, like nothing touched you." She looked at him with quiet strength. "Oh, it touched me," she said, "but it didn't break me." They stared at each other. Outside, the storm raged louder. But inside, something else was happening. Something softer, braver, undeniable. She reached across the desk, slowly, carefully, not wanting to scare him, not wanting to cross a line. Her fingers brushed the top of his hand, and Nathan didn't move. For a man who hadn't touched a woman in 20 years, who had shut the world out for 2 full decades, that single touch felt like thunder inside his chest. He didn't flinch, didn't pull away. He just looked at her. And for the first time in so long, the wall around his heart cracked. He felt her warmth, her courage, her quiet power, and something inside him whispered, "This is not just a touch. This is a bridge. This is hope." They didn't say anything more. No dramatic speeches, no grand declarations, just two souls sitting in candlelight, one learning to feel again, the other gently reminding him what it meant to be seen. Outside, the power returned. Lights blinked back on. The computer screens lit up again, but neither of them moved. Because that night, something stronger than electricity had returned. Connection, trust, and maybe even the first flicker of love. The storm had passed. But inside Nathan Cole's heart, a different kind of storm had begun, one made not of thunder, but of memory. For the first time in 20 years, Nathan felt something, and it both terrified and thrilled him. Everything had changed since that night in the dark. His mornings felt lighter. He began arriving at the office a little earlier, just to catch a glimpse of Isabella's smile. Her voice was now the first sound that soothed his tired soul. Gone was the cold, robotic man his staff once feared. In his place was a man rediscovering warmth, a man waking up from a very long sleep. He found himself asking Isabella about her dreams, her favorite books, the songs she hummed when she thought no one was listening. He even laughed one morning, really laughed, when she spilled coffee on his schedule and called it an accidental espresso break. To outsiders, it looked small, but for those who knew Nathan Cole, It was revolutionary. He was coming back to life. And Isabella? She saw the change. She felt it every time he met her eyes with softness instead of steel. Every time he leaned in, not for business, but for connection. Their late nights grew longer. They'd sit by the office window talking while the city lights blinked below like stars. He told her about his younger years, his childhood, his hunger for success. And then one night, he opened a part of himself he had kept locked away for decades. The pain. He spoke of her, the woman who broke him. Her name had once made his heart race. Now it tasted bitter in his mouth. She said she loved me, he said, voice low. We planned a life together. I was going to propose. Isabella listened quietly, her hand resting near his, but not touching. Not yet. But then, Nathan's throat tightened. Her family found out I was the wrong kind of man. My background, my blood, my roots weren't good enough. They said I would ruin her name. His eyes dropped. She left, just like that. No goodbye, no fight, just a note saying, it's not your fault, but we can't be. Silence filled the room, and I believed her, he whispered. I thought, maybe I was too much, too different, too low for someone like her. Isabella blinked back tears. Her voice was a whisper when she said, that wasn't love, Nathan. That was fear. Real love doesn't care about class, or color, or what others say. Nathan looked at her, vulnerable, open. She made me promise never to trust again, he said. But now, he paused. You're changing me, Isabella. The way he said her name, it wasn't just a name anymore. It was a prayer, a confession, a seed of something deep and dangerous. Her breath caught. You deserve happiness, Nathan, she said softly. Everyone does, even those who've been told they're not enough. She wanted to hold him, to protect the boy inside the billionaire, the one who still believed he was unworthy of love. But just as healing began, the ghost came back. It started with whispers in the office halls. The senior board noticed how Nathan treated Isabella differently, too gently, too kindly. One board member sneered, he's getting too close to the help. Another said, this isn't good for business optics, especially with her background. The words weren't said outright, but Isabella felt them. The side eyes, the pauses in meetings, the way some employees stopped talking when she entered the room. It was happening again. She had seen it before, growing up, when people smiled to her face, but whispered behind closed doors. When love was offered, then yanked away out of fear of judgment. Nathan didn't notice it at first. He was too busy watching her laugh, falling deeper each day into a feeling he thought was lost forever. Until one afternoon, an old name appeared on his meeting schedule. Margot Whitmore, the woman who once shattered his world. She had returned with a business proposal and a warning. At that meeting, she walked in, elegant and cold. I see you've changed, Nathan, she said, eyeing Isabella as she passed. But not everyone forgets where you came from. He didn't reply. Margot continued, you have a reputation to protect. This assistant of yours, don't let her cost you everything you built. Her words sliced through the room like ice. Isabella excused herself quietly, but Nathan sat frozen, not because he agreed, but because the pain of the past was bleeding into the present. Could he fight it this time? Could he stand up, not just for love, but for truth and justice, and the woman who brought his soul back from the grave? That night, Nathan stared at the city lights again. Only this time, they didn't feel so bright, because now he had to choose. Stay safe in the shadows of his past, or risk everything for the woman who gave him light. The warmth inside Nathan's heart was growing, but outside the winds of judgment howled louder every day. It began with glances in the hallway. Then it turned into whispers. Then came the subtle comments, the kind designed to look harmless but sharp enough to bleed. She's pretty for someone like her. Does she even have the right credentials? Did he hire her for her skills or something else? Nathan heard them, and with every word a fire lit in his chest. He, the untouchable CEO who once cared only about contracts and codes, now cared deeply about her. The board noticed his change. He laughed more in meetings. He canceled late-night strategy sessions, choosing instead to sit with Isabella and sip tea under the stars outside his penthouse office. But the whispers became louder, bolder. One day in a closed-door meeting, Mr. Bradford, one of the oldest board members, leaned forward with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We've all noticed the closeness between you and your assistant," he began. "You're a leader, Nathan. People watch everything you do." Nathan stared at him. Bradford continued, "You're not just a man, you're an empire. And this empire can't afford to look messy." Another member added, "She's not like us, Nathan. People talk, and talk can become scandal." Nathan's jaw tightened. "For 20 years," he said slowly, "I gave everything to this company. My life, my soul. And now when I finally find something real, you dare tell me to let it go?" "She's not the right image," someone muttered. Nathan rose from his seat. His voice was like thunder. "She's staying. If she goes, I go." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. But the storm wasn't just inside the boardroom, it was everywhere. Online blogs speculated. One post read, "CEO Nathan Cole seen smiling with new mixed-race assistant. Sources say it's more than just work." The comments below were worse. Isabella saw it all. The stares, the half-sincere greetings, the tightening of lips when she passed by, and she began to worry, not for herself, but for Nathan. He was finally free, finally opening up, and now the world wanted to chain him again. She lay awake at night, replaying the cruel words she overheard near the elevator. "She'll ruin him. She's just a phase. This won't last." Tears slid silently down her face. She remembered all the times she was told she didn't fit in, how teachers questioned if she was in the right class, how neighbors asked if she was adopted, how boys liked her in private, but never in public. Was she repeating history? Could she really let Nathan face this storm alone? She looked at the note she once wrote herself in college. During her hardest time, "You are enough. You are worthy. But sometimes love means letting go." Her hand trembled as she picked up her pen. She didn't want to leave. She didn't want to run. But she had to protect him. From gossip, from backlash, from sacrifice. So she wrote a note, just a few lines. But they held the weight of 1,000 broken dreams. "Nathan, you gave me something I never had. Hope. You reminded me that even people like us can be seen, heard, and loved. But I won't let them destroy you because of me. I'll always treasure what we had. I'll never forget the night the lights went out and my heart turned on." She folded it carefully, laid it on his desk, and walked away, with silent tears and a soul full of gratitude and grief. Nathan returned from a call that evening and found her office empty. Her desk was cleared, her chair pushed in. Only the note remained, resting like a final heartbeat. He picked it up, read the first line, and then again, and again, until the ink blurred behind the tears in his eyes. He sat in silence for a long time. Her words echoed in his head. "You gave me hope. I'll always treasure that." But something inside him, something stronger than duty, stronger than pride, began to roar. He didn't care about headlines. He didn't care about the empire. He didn't care about those who couldn't see the beauty in her skin, her strength, her soul. He cared only for her, the one woman who saw past the billionaire mask and loved the man beneath. He whispered into the quiet room, "Come back to me, Isabella. I don't want the world if it doesn't have you in it." And as lightning cracked outside the window, Nathan Cole made a decision that would shock the very foundation of his empire. The city was waking slowly, but Nathan's heart had never raced faster. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. All night he sat staring at the letter Isabella left, reading it again and again like a man drowning in silence, clinging to the sound of her voice in ink. He had everything: a billion-dollar empire, the loyalty of shareholders, the admiration of the tech world. But in the end, it meant nothing. Not if she wasn't there. So he threw on his coat, grabbed his car keys, and did something he hadn't done in decades. He ran. Down the marble steps of his office tower, through the buzzing streets of the city, past the polished walls of his legacy, straight to the little cafe by the river, the one she loved, where the world had no rules and no judgment. When he saw her, he froze. Isabella was sitting at her usual corner table, a scarf wrapped around her neck, eyes puffy from crying, a half-empty cup of coffee beside her. Her fingers played nervously with the hem of her coat. She looked like someone trying not to fall apart. She didn't see him at first, and then she did. Her lips parted in shock. She stood up slowly, eyes wide, chest rising and falling. "Nathan?" He didn't answer right away. He walked to her slowly, like she might vanish if he moved too fast. Then he stopped, just inches away. "I've spent 20 years locked inside myself," he said, his voice rough. 20 years hiding behind walls, chasing numbers, earning praise from people who never knew my soul. He paused, his eyes shining. "And then you came in, Isabella, and melted everything." She swallowed. Her voice was barely a whisper. "But what about your company? Your board? Your name?" Nathan reached out and took her hand gently. "I don't want a name written in gold if it means being empty inside," he said. "I want one name beside mine. Yours." Tears filled her eyes. "Nathan," she breathed. But he wasn't done. "I don't care what the board thinks. I don't care what the headlines say. You are the only truth I've ever known." She was crying now, trembling in the middle of that quiet cafe. And then they embraced. It wasn't a dramatic kiss or some rehearsed scene from a movie. It was real. Two souls, bruised but brave, holding each other like the world had tried to break them. But love had won. People around them clapped quietly. A barista smiled through her tears. The wind outside calmed, as if the city itself sighed in relief. Nathan didn't go back to the office that day, or the next. Instead, he made a choice that stunned the corporate world. He stepped down as CEO of Coltech. People gasped. The press exploded with headlines. "Billionaire CEO steps down for love and builds something greater." Nathan took his savings, millions of dollars, and founded something new. The More Coal Project for Equality. Its mission? To break down barriers in the tech world, to train and mentor underprivileged youth from every background, to say, your race, your story, your past, none of it should stop your future. They opened centers across the country: Chicago, Atlanta, Oakland, Houston. Kids once told they'd never make it were now building apps, launching startups, speaking on global stages. All because one man and one woman decided love mattered more than legacy. And Nathan and Isabella? They got married quietly. No media, no spotlight. Just them, on a quiet hill overlooking the river, with laughter, light, and a handful of people who truly knew their story. He wore a gray suit. She wore a soft white dress and flowers in her hair. When he said, "I do," his voice cracked, but only a little. Because for the first time in 20 years, his heart was whole. That night they danced under the stars. There were no reporters, no investors, no cold boardrooms. Just love, just peace, just them. And as they held each other on the dance floor, Isabella whispered, "Do you ever miss the old life?" Nathan smiled against her hair. Not for a second. Then he looked around at the young faces laughing, the kids from the foundation running around with dreams in their eyes, and the diverse crowd surrounding them with love and light. And he said, "This is the only legacy I want. Love sees no race. Pain has no class. And healing. Healing begins the moment we stop judging and start seeing the soul inside the skin. Because sometimes the most powerful empires are built not with stone or money, but with compassion.